Great, thanks, Jen. Appreciate the intro. Appreciate the New York Wine and Grape Foundation for letting us speak to everyone today. Excited to be here. As Jen said, what we're talking about today, from harvest to bottom line, the benefits of winery software. So to go through this presentation, I would like to make it as easy on all of us as possible. So if you have questions, please ask in the chat, in the Q&A section, as I'm going through the slides. Like these things to be interactive, so if you have any questions that come up as I'm going through, please throw it in there. I'll make sure to try and answer it as we go through. And then if we don't get to any during the presentation, we'll get to them at the end. So with that, we'll go ahead and jump into it. This first slide is my least favorite because it's me looking at myself in the exact same thing that I'm wearing now. But just a little short bio of myself, like Jen said, started Ekos in 2014 with a main focus then on craft breweries. Then over the years, we've expanded into more craft alcohol because we've seen the same need across the different industries that we work in. I'm a big believer in tech being able to make companies more efficient so that you can spend time on the things you actually want to spend time on, as opposed to having to sit behind a computer for 10 hours a day. That is not why you started working at wineries. That's not why you're in this business. So we want to make that process as easy as possible. Like Jen said, worked with thousands of companies over the years, continuing to grow different parts of the supply chain. And that's kind of what we are, and I'll get into that in a second. And I also have my partner in crime on this webinar, Nick. Nick is one of our account executives on the team. Nick, introduce yourself.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Josh. Great to meet you all virtually. Really appreciate you all taking the time to connect today and carving out some time during harvest. I know how busy that time of year is for you all, but yeah, I've been working with Ekos this year, came from a research and advisory background, but after seeing the strides that Ekos was making in the wine business, I knew I had to join the team. So really excited for a productive conversation with you all, and we have to go with the materials.
Thanks, Nick. We're gonna tag team this. So I'm gonna do some slides. Nick's gonna do some slides. Again, as we're going through, please ask questions, and we'll help any way that we can. At the end, you'll also get Nick's email address. If you want to find out more about us, you'll be able to reach out to him. We're going to give some links as we go through the presentation as well. We have a ton of great content on our website, and we will point you to all of that. So to get into it, let's talk about this. This slide is what we call internally digitizing the craft supply chain. Now, what does that mean? You all know running a winery is a very complex business, and I'm not just talking about the grapes. I'm talking about the whole business that you're having to manage the day-to-day of, all the way from the left of your screen, from your raw materials. So we're talking about your grapes, if you're buying any juice from any other parts of the country, talking about your bottles, your corks, your packaging, all of that getting to you as the producer. So then you actually know how much inventory you have of these different additives, how much grapes that you're bringing in, how much juice you actually have to ferment and to make your wine, and the other parts of inventory that you need to be able to run the business. Now, as Ekos, I'll talk about this more in a second, we handle a lot of the main tenets of the business in terms of inventory, production, sales, and accounting. But then if you look to the right, we handle these 4 main sales channels as well. So depending on how you have your business set up, that can either be, sales can either be through the traditional 3-tier system. So you selling your products to a distributor and them selling to a retailer. Self-distribution method, in North Carolina, we're able to do that. I know the breweries are as well up in New York. So there's that whole relationship management with your retailers, your bars, your restaurants. And then you have your e-commerce and club. Club is a big aspect of the business, being able to manage not just your sales through that, but then also being able to handle the different people that are in your clubs, buying different products from you, the amount they've spent with you over the lifetime. And then we have the tasting room. So we have all the people that are coming through, buying a couple of glasses, buying some bottles to take home, whatever it may be. But we see these as the 4 main channels, then leading through to the consumer. Now, there are different variations in these. Maybe you're using a fulfillment company to help you with your club. Maybe you just have a fulfillment company helping you with your storage. We know there's different nuances to this, but overall, our mission and vision here at Ekos is to help connect all these pieces together to give you the visibility into your business so that you can make the best decisions possible, as opposed to kind of guessing and going by gut feel. Gut may go with making the wine, depending on how you want it to taste. But for the rest of the business, it's good to make data-driven decisions. And that's what we aim to help with. So at a high level, this is kind of what we see as the benefits of winery software. Now, I'm going to talk about a couple of things here. I might put some salt into the wound for some of you, for some of your day-to-day processes. Just trying to help out where we can. But for this, these are the main things that we handle as a business. Inventory, like I mentioned, that can be your grapes that you're bringing in through harvest. That can be the juice that you have sitting in the tanks that's fermenting, the fermenting wine that you have in barrels, stainless, whatever it may be. That's your packaging goods. Maybe some of you are canning, maybe you're just bottling. Maybe your labels, you have special labels for some wines, you have special boxes for some of your wine clubs, your additives, all of that inventory. So we handle that, as well as all your case goods. So after you package everything up, after it's either sitting there for a little while or prepared to sell, what inventory do we have of each vintage? Where is it located? What was the cost of that? And that all flows from the production process. So receiving in all of your grapes, through harvest, the amounts, the tags, the work orders, and then pushing that all the way through the process, depending on how long it takes for the wine that you're making to be able to be ready to get out in the market. And then that leads to the sales process. So that can either be via just invoicing out of the system to your distributors, handling those relationships, keeping track of those. But then underlying all of this is the accounting, which, depending on your background, is either exciting or it's a pain. For me, accounting is not my background, so it's definitely a pain. So what Ekos does so well is, through all these different steps in the process, underneath the hood, it's keeping track of all your accounting information for you without you having to be an accountant. So essentially, your winemaker, and I know this is a scary statement I'm about to make, your winemaker can be your accountant. As they're adding additives to your wine, to the process, throughout the process, it'll deduct those things out of inventory and add that cost into your wine, so that as it moves through the process, you actually know how much your wine costs to make. I know it's a crazy concept, it is, but it can happen as you're going through the process. That then helps you figure out how to price your wine after you get ready to take it to market, depending on your vintages, depending on the blood, sweat, and tears that went into actually getting it there. This all syncs with your books. Most of our customers work with QuickBooks, either online or desktop edition. And then we have integrations with Xero, and we have exports for other accounting systems as well. A lot of that just depends on how you have your business set up. The benefit of all of this that we're talking about, our software is cloud-based. So what does that mean? You don't have to only go to one computer and use it from there all the time, or install it from that one computer. You can access Ekos from your phone. You can do it from your iPad, your laptop, any Android devices, whatever it may be. It's accessible everywhere. And then that information syncs to all your different systems as well. So as we're going through here, a lot of the things that we're going to talk about, I know how they're being kept track of today. You're keeping track of them on paper, or you're keeping track of them on different point solutions. So maybe you have a different system for production, and then you have something else you're keeping track of your inventory and your case goods, because the production system doesn't do that well. Then you have your invoices being created in another place, and your sales team isn't talking to your production team. We help to break down those silos, and we're going to walk through how we help with that as well. So the first kind of challenge that we're going to touch on is inventory. So managing your case goods inventory. What does that look like? And then how can we help in that process? So every year we do a state of technology report, and we do a big survey out to the craft alcohol community, essentially, breweries, wineries, cideries. And we ask the questions on, what are you using to run your business? How are you using those tools? Do you like them? What are you using for your e-commerce, your clubs, these different solutions? And it's always interesting to see what comes back and what the landscape looks like in the industry. So one of the questions that we ask is, what are you using to keep track of your inventory? And not surprisingly, more than 40% of wineries are using spreadsheets for inventory management. Now, I say this being the person that hates spreadsheets, but I use them too, just like the notebooks. The notebooks are everywhere, but I can't make decisions on a single spreadsheet for the business. What happens is you have to pull the information from that spreadsheet, put it into another spreadsheet with information from everywhere else, or put the information from that spreadsheet into another system, just to get the insights that you need to be able to make decisions for the business. So spreadsheets are easy to keep track of points of data, points of data and time, but not necessarily for getting insights out of it without a lot of legwork to do so. So when we talk about spreadsheets galore, that's what this is what that means. So for production and dry goods, out of the wineries that responded to the survey, 40% were using spreadsheets, 13% are using nothing. So I guess that's just a wild guess. It's just, yeah, I think we have this. And then 7 are homegrown systems. So that can be like an old school Access database, depending on your knowledge of technology. That can be fancy spreadsheets with different calculations and everything else in them. And then for case goods inventory, after it gets through production, we have everything made, 45% were using spreadsheets for that inventory, 11% using nothing at all, again, just eyeballing the cases that are sitting in the back in storage, and then 5% using QuickBooks to keep track of that inventory. So what we're going to do is kind of walk through how we replace those spreadsheets and how we can help you keep these pieces of the business together. And so for this next slide, I kick it over to Nick, and he's going to walk through it.
Yeah, appreciate it, Josh. And I think those are some great call outs. You know, when talking to wineries, one of the biggest things that I hear is that access to the real-time inventory across your different storage locations. So, you know, between your production facility, your warehouses, the tasting room alike, you know, it's hard to keep track of where everything is and the accurate accounts that you have on hand. So with Ekos, you guys are able to quickly gauge, you know, where that inventory is at, where the dollar amounts are at on those inventory items, and then, you know, when you're going to be running low based on actions that you're running through the system. So like Josh touched on, this is accounting for everything from your corks and your labels up to your finished bottles and cases, and the visibility that's going to ensure that, you know, you never have to push out a bottling run due to the lack of materials, or on the case good side of things, that you have all enabling your team to sell more product and avoid overselling inventory that might have been allocated elsewhere. I think, yeah, we can all agree that the visibility into these assets across the business is going to be very key when you're running the winery.
Thanks, Nick. So thinking through this process, you think about your day-to-day now in terms of your inventory. So how often are you creating purchase orders or orders from your suppliers for the things that Nick mentioned, the labels, the corks, those type of things? And what's that process look like now? Is it you sending it off an email and they're emailing back and saying, hey, I can do that or I can't do that, and then you have 10 more emails back and forth trying to figure out a delivery date and everything else? The beautiful part with Ekos is you can create those in the system and it emails out to your suppliers from there. So you have that record of what you ordered, and you can also keep track of what you actually received against it. Then, as the screenshot showing here, it's going to forecast that out for you so you can see if you have a bottling run scheduled on a certain date based on when your the wine's going to be ready. You can see if you're going to be able to actually do it, like Nick said. Like, that's a key. So do we actually have enough cork to cork? That's kind of important. Do we have enough foil if we're using foil? Do we have enough cages? Like, depending on what you're making and that whole process, what we do is we help keep all that information together. We sync those inventory receipts over to your accounting system as well. That's where you pay all of them. But we keep that inventory in check so that you know what's happening and where it's happening. Now, through this presentation, I'm going to touch on a couple of examples from some of the wineries that we work with, all of varying sizes. This quote comes from Pine Hollow Winery. And what they said was probably the biggest thing that Ekos has done for us is taking that where are we at, what do we need moment away. There's no wondering what we have on hand. It's as simple as going in Ekos, bringing up that product and seeing how much we have right now. I've talked to so many wineries on the inventory piece, but then the finished goods piece of just, you know, how does your tasting room manager know what you have available to send to the tasting room? Is that wine already allocated to your club? Is it already allocated to the trade to go out to your distributors? You know, those nuances, that communication just doesn't happen as often as we would like it to. So this is one of the things that we help with to figure those things out along the process. Next, let's talk about production. So let's talk about the time that you're going through now, especially depending on how the business is set up, where you're located. Harvest. So let's talk about tracking harvest through bottling. So this is the production side. And the winemaking side is something I have such reverence for because it's such an art. And that's one of the things that we love about the companies that we work with, is because it's so much science and it's so much gut taste, depending on what you have and what you want to make out of it. And it's just such an artistic process. And so when we were talking to a bunch of winemakers and operations managers on what's the technology you can't live without, this question always gets a lot of good responses. And why does it get good responses on the technology side? In this word cloud, you can see the answers that came up the most: QuickBooks, spreadsheets, computer. But then you can also see on here cell phones, social media, internet, forklift, pump. All kinds of technology is spread out through here. And so the view on technology is wide in your industry. And so when we talk about technology, I fully realize that you as a winemaker, as an operations manager, you're trying to figure out how can you replace those notebooks, or in some cases those yellow pads. I can't tell you how many wineries I've walked into, and I have the same problem. It's the notebook problem, right? You have the notebook that you've used for this harvest for this year. It's worn out. It's got a ton of notes on it. It's how the weather was this year, how the grapes are progressing, what they look like, what they taste like, what the pH levels are. And then if you're me, then you have the clean notebook that I filled up the other one, so I had to get a new one. And then the bookshelf just fills up with them. Well, think about it. Whenever you did harvest a couple of years ago, where are you going to go? Where are you going to go get that information at? If you need to reference it for the vintage that's coming up, maybe it's been ready for about 2-3 years, getting ready to go to market, and you're trying to think, what was that year? I think I remember, but I'm not sure. Then you got to go look through 30 notebooks to even get to that point. We help bring this technology forward so that you can access it easier. So with that, I'll let Nick talk about how these things start with harvest and how we help with it.
Yeah, definitely. So, when we look at that grape to glass process here at Ekos, we're looking to give you the tools to make your life as simple and as easy as possible, starting in the production process and starting with our harvest tracking tool. So, really easy way to track your blocks and the intakes and begin building that historical data that lives in a system available to reference for you through years and years, as opposed to the notepads stacking up on the side of the desk. Now you're able to notate any actions that you partook during the harvest process, so all your crushing, your destemming, any additives, take pictures of those specific intakes, and then notate, what vessels are we going to send this juice into? So no longer are you going to have to write that in the notepad, then take all of those actions and put them across the different spreadsheets or the other systems. It's that first action that you're taking with the intake is going to be the last action that you have to do. So get rid of a lot of duplicate data entry across this process and use a simple app to make sure that that first recording is the only recording necessary. And now that kind of flows right into that production side of the house. So you've got all of the juice and vessels, and the production process continues. So you'll be able to get a bird's eye view of what's in all of your different vessels, what lots are in them, and then drill into those lots specifically and notate the information that's going to be relevant to you during that process. So all of the composition, the chemistry, the analysis of those lots, track those throughout the process and be able to reference them throughout the life cycle of that lot. Now you can also look into your varietals, your vintage, and then get your team involved. So we want to make sure that your team's communication is on point and everyone is on the same page. So enable you to assign tasks throughout these production processes where your team members are logging in. All right, what do I need to do today to help push these lots forward and make the winery successful? So throughout that entire process of bringing in those intakes into putting them into your vessels all the way up into bottling, your team's going to have the visibility and the communication to really get the job done.
Yeah, so the production and harvest aspect is one of my favorite things to talk about with the software. And I say that because we continue to work with wineries all over the country, and we get a lot of great feedback. And one of the things that's great about the team at Ekos and our team here is our production, our product, and our engineering teams actually go in the field with our wineries and help them with harvest. The harvest is going on here in North Carolina. Just a couple of weeks ago, our product and technology teams went up, and they were in the fields right alongside of the winemakers and the grapes and everything else to make sure that we're developing what the industry needs. While not being in the traditional Napa Valley area, there can be a stigma about being outside of that valley. Good wine is made everywhere. There are good winemakers all over the place, and those processes translate. And we love being in North Carolina, close to our winemakers right up the road from us. We're located in Charlotte, so we go up to the Yadkin Valley all the time. And being able to actually get boots on the ground, be in the dirt with the grapes and everything else, it helps us understand the problems better that we are solving day in and day out. And our team continues to push out version after version, iteration after iteration, based on the feedback that we get from our wineries. And it's one of the best things that we get to do day in and day out. One of those wineries that we work with up the road, Shelton, they're 20,000 cases a year, have on-site tasting room, restaurant, do different events all the time, as I'm sure a lot of you do as well. And this is the quote from the winemaker there, Ethan. Ekos has really helped us keep track of the inventory coming in, understand how that goes into the wine and how that subtracts from inventory. It's doing everything we need for production. So we understand that the production is just one aspect of the business, but arguably it's the most important aspect of the business. So we love being able to help you all with your processes day in, day out. We love getting the feedback. We love making the updates, helping with harvest, production, whatever else it may be. That's what gets us excited and gets us up in the morning. Now, next, after you make all that wine, what are you going to do with it? It's just not just going to sit there. So how do we sell it? How do we push it out to market? So let's talk about the sales challenge of maximizing DTC sales. So with this, there's a number of different vendors that are out in the world of DTC. I'm sure that some of you have used a couple, maybe you've stuck with one throughout the duration of the winery. But especially during COVID, DTC was such a big part of the business, right? It was before, it's grown since then. There's been efficiencies in the process. But when we asked our wineries what technology they were using, on the left, you can see for winery point of sale software, the top 5 were Square, which is 34% of the respondents, Wine Direct, which is 17%, Order Port at 8%, no point of sale software, and then Commerce 7 coming in at 6%. On the right side, you can see on the e-commerce software, top 5 responses, Veno Shipper 21%, Wine Direct coming in at 20%, no e-commerce software at 12%, Square coming in at 12%, and then Order Port coming in at 9%. So we see a lot of these systems being used to help drive this revenue stream. And a lot of that driving of that stream is going to come from how you have the technology set up and how you're pushing your potential customers or existing wine club members to your websites. We do a lot of webinars and talks like this. And one of the big things I always put a lot of emphasis on whenever I'm talking about e-commerce or clubs or online sales is you can have the most beautiful online store set up, the best DTC setup, you can have the best club setup, the best club options, you can put free swag in there all day so your people keep buying from you. But the reality is, no matter how good the website is, no matter how good your online store is and your club is, if you're not pushing potential consumers there, then no one's going to buy from you. So think about DTC holistically in terms of, yeah, there's the online store, there's that online presence, but think about it too and how you're pushing your existing contacts, your existing marketing email contacts to that website, the people that come through your tasting room. Really think about how you're engaging with them and driving them to that sales channel. Now, some of you may be using fulfillment warehouses. Some of you may be doing it yourselves, blood, sweat, and tears, boxing up everything, getting the labels and shipping it out. But these are the main players that we see in the space to help with that process. But think about it holistically and not just setting up the store, getting it set up, and then leaving it to sit. You got to keep nurturing those potential customers and existing customers so they keep buying from you and you're top of mind. And with that, what we like to say is, again, like the DTC software alone is not enough, but for us at Ekos, we know that it is such a big part of the business. So that's why we have a number of integrations in place to help make that more efficient. So what we've seen from the surveys that we've done, from the studies that we've done internally, is we can help you be 25% more efficient with integrations. So what does that even mean? So you think about in the middle of this image, you have Ekos. So inventory, production, sales, and accounting. All that accounting information is being generated. We sync those journal entries, those invoices, all that necessary information over to your books. So if you outsource your accounting, you're not having to grab all those spreadsheets, all those papers, handoff, email, whatever else. They're getting all the information synced over automatically. So that step is off your plate. When you look at the sales side, there's a couple of different ways that we help there. One is the e-commerce piece, and that's thinking about like a Shopify integration. So maybe your online store is set up through Shopify. The way that sync works is you set up your inventory, you want to sync to the online store in Ekos, and it pushes it up to your online website. Then as people buy from your website, it deducts that inventory from there, syncs it back to Ekos, syncs that sales information, and it depletes the inventory in real time, so that you don't have to update your inventory in Shopify, then go to your point of sale software and update your inventory there, and then go back to your spreadsheets and update it there. That syncing, it happens automatically without you even having to think about it. So all that inventory is kept in sync in real time. So then your operations manager, your production manager, your tasting room manager, your sales manager, whoever it may be, they're getting the same numbers across the board without you manually have to update the whiteboard that's in the corner of the winery or your spreadsheet or send out an email or a text. Same thing happens with Square and with Commerce 7, the way that those work. If those are your online stores, your clubs, as the sales happen there, that revenue information synced over, that inventory gets depleted, and then you have that information and you're good to go. Another thing that we see when you're not going through DTC and club is your sales orders and invoicing process. So when we asked the wineries for the survey, how are you managing your sales orders? 93% said through emails, calls, and texts. It's easy, right? It's easy, it's efficient. We all have our phones on us all the time, so it seems like the easiest way. And it is true, it's easy, but one of the things I always urge people to think about is if the majority of your communication and your sales process is going through your sales rep's phone, think about worst case scenario. One, if they leave, or two, you have to fire them, that history's gone with that customer, with that distributor, with that retailer, with whoever it may be. It's walking out the door with them. So with a system like Ekos and be able to keep track of all the notes and information in the system, it doesn't matter who's putting it in, you're going to be able to have that history for years building on each other. So you know the preferences, the tastes, and everything else for your customers, and it's kept track of in that one place, so you don't have to worry about the information walking away. 15% of the respondents said they were going through order portals. 9% said their own systems. A lot of times we see people set up their online forms, like a Google Sheet. People log on, request what they want, and move on their way. 4% said other. And then on the invoicing system side, 14% business management software like an Ekos, 63% accounting software. So if you think about this, and maybe it's a point of contention within your company, is if you're using your accounting software for the invoicing, most of the time that means that your sales reps have access to QuickBooks. They have access to your accounting system, the books, the dollars, all that fun stuff. That's not ideal. So that's one reason that we created Ekos, is so that they're in a different system with the inventory. They can create the invoices with the same information, but they're not in your books day in and day out. So we have that separation in the business. 32% using spreadsheets for the invoicing and sales orders, and 10% using other. Now, at Ekos, we've seen this over the years be a massive problem in terms of the sales process, keeping this inventory up to date, the processes up to date. So last year, we launched a product called Ekos Order Hub. And with that, I'm going to let Nick jump in and talk about it.
Yeah. With those stats in mind, we see that a lot of wholesale sales team members are spending a lot of time going back and forth with the current clients over those different channels of, call, text, email. And they're spending a lot of time doing that as opposed to trying to get your wine in the hands of new customers. So, we know how much passion that you're putting into each bottle and how you want your creation to get into the hands of as many people as possible. And this is really where that Order Hub's coming into play. So your team's going to be able to invite your customers that you're working with directly to the Order Hub, and then really get granular into what each customer is seeing. So they're able to set different groups, different price lists, minimums, maximums, pre-orders. You ultimately have the final say in what each customer is able to see. And then they're able to quickly place your order with you. So easy e-commerce shopping cart flow. I know you all probably have an Amazon Prime account. Everyone does. Everyone's really used to this kind of flow, and the process doesn't change there. So your team will be able to, approve the orders that come in, edit those orders, or deny those orders. but ultimately really is going to eliminate that back and forth and enable your sales team to really drive into new accounts and push your brand deeper into the marketplace.
Yeah, that's great. So you think about it, if just take a second and think about that relationship. If you're going through the distributor, think about that relationship. A lot of times I'll talk to sales managers, winery owners, whoever it may be, and I'm like, how is the relationship with your distributor? And a lot of times I get the answer, they're a bunch of idiots. And I'm like, okay, well, we don't need to get too into the details, but they always bring up the back and forth on the ordering process and what that involves, what it looks like, the information share, the emails, again, the text messages, just that constant back and forth. Order Hub helps cut down on that so that you have all your vintages on your online store, your winemakers tasting notes so that they can get that information out. And it gives your end user, your end buyer, an idea of what the product is, the tasting notes, what they can compare it to. And then it gives them that inventory as well. So they know if you're running low on it, well, I need to go ahead and scoop all that up. They'll go ahead and do that. But like Nick said, you only show them what you want them to see. You don't have to show them everything unless you just want to. Maybe you have one distributor and that's all you want to push that inventory through. You're able to do that. But Hub, it cuts that communication back and down. We've seen great adoption from the distributor side on it. We've seen great adoption through the self-distribution side as well. It opens up those lines of communication more to help more thoughtful dialogue, and cuts down on some of the back and forth on maybe some time wasting that's going on in the process. So with that, another quote. So this is from Thomas Allen, a winery out in California, 1.2 million cases a year. The quote, Ekos has freed up enough time for us to increase the amount of production and the amount of business that we're bringing in. Thomas Allen's been with us for about 2 years, I believe, and they continue to grow year over year. And that's a lot of because of the efficiencies they have in the process and the insights they get out of the data that we provide them. So you think about the reporting and everything else. If you have the data to actually give you the insights as opposed to just guessing again or pulling up your notebooks, it helps you make better decisions through the process. Real quick, got a question from Rob. Oh, Rob, this is a good question. What is the Ekos Wine Plus software annual cost with no add-ons? What are the add-ons? Are there any discounts for new customers? Is the data saved on the cloud or locally? Rob, these are great. So first, Nick's going to follow up with you, and we'll put his email in as well. A lot of the pricing depends on how your company's set up. So we'll take a look at the volume that you're producing, so that we make sure it's priced right for you, as well as the kind of integrations and stuff that you need to go through the process. But we work with our customers to figure out what that right pricing is for you, and then what you actually need to run the business, because maybe you just have the tasting room, or maybe you do have a Shopify store set up, but then like Order Hub that we just talked about, that's included for everyone. So that's not an add-on, it's included in the Ekos platform. So we'll make sure to get your information, make sure to give you Nick's email address, and we'll follow up with you on that. And the data is stored in the cloud, but you can export everything. There's reports and everything else. We have backups and everything that run every night. So it's in a bunch of different places. So God forbid, worst case scenario, it won't get lost. So next, understanding your cost, the accounting challenge, the ever eternal questions of how do you set your wine prices? What's your ideal profit margin? How do you calculate your COGS? How much should your wine cost? What are your margins? And is this wine even making us a profit? We see with a lot of companies we work with, this isn't just in wine, this is across the board with any food or beverage manufacturer. What should I actually price my product at? And then how much does it even cost to make? So without knowing how much your wine actually costs between the hours of labor that are going into it, the additives that are going in, your packaging cost, how much those are costing. Some of you may have the really fancy labels that are gold foil and everything else, and you love those and that's part of your brand, and that's great, but they also come at additional cost. You got to make sure that you're making up for that on the price you're selling your product at, so that you're making enough money to be able to run the business. Knowing the total cost of your wine is super important before you push it out into market, especially as those vintages come year to year. It depends on, are you just walking through the stores to see what everyone else is pricing it at? Are you looking at your different New York wineries and what they're pricing it at? There's a lot of things that go into it, but if you have the data to go into these things and you are able to actually see them, then you can figure out what is the best price for my wine as I push it out in the market. So for knowing your COGS, I'll give it to Nick and he can talk through this.
Yeah, I feel like cost of goods sold has never been more relevant than it is today. I know we've all felt the rising effects of the prices across the board in our personal lives, but I know now, our winery customers are quickly finding that the rising costs across the board has had their margins not as feasible as they were in years past. So the money that they were making on varietals in 2020, 2021 is now not the same money they're making in 2022 unless pricing changes are in effect. Now, as we've gone on the inventory side, with Ekos tracking all of your inventory and the costs associated, we're able to give you those costs of goods sold on a lot basis. So we can help you competitively price yourself, not only in your tasting rooms, but those other sales channels to ensure that you're making the profit margins that you need to hit your revenue goals as an organization, or just to keep the doors open in general. And I think the numbers speak for themselves. If you look on the slide, our customers are seeing on average a 10 to 15% boost in margins just with that cost and granularity. So staying on top of them is really critical, and we can help you do that.
Yeah, like Nick said, 10 to 15% boost in profit margins. And it's like, how is that really feasible? Well, if you think about being able to view your data over time, to be able to see maybe you switched cork manufacturers at some point and maybe the quality isn't that great and you're paying more than you were with your previous supplier, you can see those things over time to be able to make the decisions. Well, maybe I just need to go back to my old supplier, or maybe I need to go back and renegotiate some contracts to get those costs down so I can increase my margins. Ekos has a ton of prepackaged reports in the system already from day one that you get in, you start populating data, they'll start giving you insights. You can create your own dashboards for you as well as your production team or your sales team and share those out so that they can see the things that you want them to see, the things that you're keeping track of for your internal goals, your KPIs, whatever it may be. All these things are reportable and you can do those, you can share them with the team so that everyone is looking at the same information so they can make the best decisions on the fly. Now, this last quote from one of our customers, drink this, 2,000 cases a year. Fluctuating costs would be very difficult to manually track without a system like Ekos that's going to give you a blended, accurate COGS. That is critical to understanding our margin analysis and remaining as efficient and aware as possible on how we're functioning as a business. Again, obviously we're a software company, so I'm going to keep harping on it. Having all of your data accessible and being able to report off of it and make better decisions off of it is key. Now, one of the things I didn't touch on that I want to before we close this out is all this information that we talked about from your inventory, your production, sales, and accounting. We also generate your TTB reports for you. So whenever you get to the end of the quarter, end of the month, however often that you're reporting, we give you that information. Your TTB report is literally 2 clicks of a button, populates everything based on the information that you put in. So you want to talk about efficiencies, we can do that in 2 seconds, as opposed to you having to spend hours every month, again, gathering those notebooks, the paper, and everything else to do that. So your wine report of operations, you consider it done, generate it, walk away, go have a drink, and you're good to go. So real quick, just to wrap things up, this is Ekos, this is what we do. We are digitizing the supply chain all the way from raw materials to consumers, and that is making sure you have the right insights for your business and making sure you're being the most efficient you can be in your different sales channels with integrations, partnerships, and all of the things. So before I move on and kind of close things out, I want to mention real quick the website. So if you go to goekos.com/wine, you'll get a lot of information that's just for wineries. We also have another website that's goekos.com/resource library, and you can filter by wine articles. And we have so many pre-recorded webinars, white papers, documents that go through all the different ways to help run your business, from your tasting room insights and best practices, all the way through to your production best practices there. One of our wineries has a webinar on there that he walks through all of his best practices, what he does with Ekos and how to use all the things. A lot of great resources. They're free. You just have to download them. As much as we want you to use the software, we also want you to be able to run a more efficient business. And so that's why we spend a lot of time on our Craft Lab website, our resources, our white papers, and everything else. So if you have any questions, please throw them in the Q&A or in the chat before we wrap up. Also, if you want to reach out to Nick to get your information, you can see his email address here at nick.staton@goekos.com. Nick, are you monitoring your email? Are you looking at it as we speak?
Oh yeah, I got it pulled up. So if you send me something, I'll reply ASAP. And one thing I'll do too, team, I'm going to throw my calendar link in the chat today. So if you want to just book time directly with me, feel free to do that, and we can connect and discuss your winery and how Ekos can assist.
Awesome. So again, if you have any questions, please ask. But again, we have a ton of resources on our website. Like Jen said, this recording will be sent out. So if you need to reference it again or pass it on to someone else, please do so. If you have any questions, come to our website, ask myself, Nick, or anyone else. Going through, you got Nick's calendar invite. No more question coming through.
Yeah, and if anyone happens to think of any questions after we end today and you don't have their contact information, just reach out to me and I can put you in touch with them directly.
Awesome. Thank you, Jen. We appreciate that. Well, again, it's 11:43 East Coast. We will give you all some time back in your day. So if you need anything from us, please let us know. Otherwise, we thank you so much for attending the webinar today and watching, and we'll see you next time.